Next up, we've got a conversation about marketing to businesses in real time, and this is moderated by a partner of ours at FM and a friend, Henry Blodget. So I'll let Henry bring on everybody, and welcome, guys.
Like the future is supposed to be, in the aisles of the grocery, in the blocks uptown. I remember.
Great, thank you very much. So the point of this panel is to figure out how it is different marketing to businesses rather than consumers, both via conversational marketing and traditional marketing. But what I want to do is start right off with picking up where the last panel left off. We had the big ad agencies giving their story. What I want to do is have Andy Lark of Dell, who's our first, actually let me just introduce Andy Lark of Dell, Marianne Fitzmaurice of American Express, and Tariq Hassan of HP. And Andy was just remarking, having listened to the folks from the ad agencies talk about how it was just not really resonating with the way he views things internally. And in fact, you were saying, you know what, I'm basically done with those guys.
Yeah, I mean, we just, you know, and by the way, we spend a lot with agencies, and WPP is a big partner of ours. But I really think that, you know, as a marketer, you look at a lot of the people in the room, and where am I going to put money? Am I going to sit with an agency who's got an agency cost structure, who everything starts at $500,000 and up, and have endless conversations around with creative types? Or am I going to take 50, 100 grand, and am I going to hand it to Federated Media and say, go build me a new community and generate content, let's get conversations going? Or, you know, Joel Babbitt over at MNN, right, turns up and says, hey, I want to build the world's largest green site to rival CNN, and how about it? Right, yeah, okay, great, we'll go and invest in that. Right, so you shift those dollars now increasingly to the entrepreneurs who are agile, who are low cost, who are startup mindset, and ignite conversations at a much lower dollar basis. And by the way, all the PhDs you fund in things are increasingly shifting to India. You do that work there at a much lower cost.
And so just to be totally clear, so somebody came to you and said, basically, I want to start a media company, I need some startup capital. You said, we'll sponsor the whole thing.
Yeah, I've got an idea, a way of igniting conversations with people you want to have conversations with, and I'm uniquely in a position to go do that. We're all ears. We want to go fund that. And those entrepreneurs increasingly, they can't make their way through our own organizational structures and the organizational structures of agencies with media buying companies and specialization. Really, really hard for them to navigate through that. So pick up the phone, and, you know, I think a bigger portion of that marketing budget will flow to innovation.
And Marianne, American Express has launched Open, which is a huge effort, again with Federated Media, and I certainly don't want this to be a whole advertisement for Federated Media, but this is the same thing. It's creating a community and a media company rather than just buying traditional dollars. So talk about the thinking behind that, how it's going.
So it is a big shift for us, and I think Open has been really created the path for the rest of American Express. And in fact, we were the first to create this community. You heard John talk a bit about it this morning, and it's really about being about customer needs and being about educating our customers. I think that the old way of marketing was about marketing a product and educating on that product, so it was much more a push. This is much more about helping to educate our customers or educate small businesses around how we can help them grow their business. So we are viewing this as, if our customers grow, we'll grow. Not about how can we grow our bottom line. So it's much more about this conversation, and it's really a shift in going to Andy's point about agencies. We're using more agencies now. So because it's much more about a publishing model. It's content, creation of content, using different mediums, and I think it's caused our agencies to have to be more nimble, more creative, and actually created some competition between them, and I think that's a good thing.
And Tariq, give us an overview of what HP's doing. You founding media companies.
Yeah, well, someone's gonna Google me and find out I spent 20 years in the agency business, so I better do some little protection of that conversation. I think what we're talking about is a restructuring of how you use your agency resources. And I agree with Andy. I think it's not a presumption of a standard, scope of work that costs X, Y, Z. I think you have to. In our case, we've really moved from thinking through a vertical structure to truly moving towards, overused word, integration. But I think the tools are finally there now to help you actually enable some of those things. So for me, I look at my lead agency partners as truly to be about managing my brand. The distinction becomes, and I think of what all we're going to talk about is, ultimately we're talking about understanding the consumer experience and allowing that consumer experience to determine the points in which you engage the customer. And that requires, I think, a very different set of resources, and you move into almost a general contractor type model where you have to determine where am I going to push resources at any given time, and to lock yourself into a traditional model doesn't work. And so to Andy's point about being more nimble, identifying different players, I think those agencies that reinvent themselves will reinvent the value on being able to help clients orchestrate and understand where those areas in the touch point are. And then the last point I think really touches on, the notion of that customer relationship we're talking about in the first place. And rather than moving towards a model that's all about moving widgets, the challenge of the funnel, right? We're all hearing it. Does a traditional customer funnel even exist anymore, as opposed to understanding what the roadmap to customer loyalty is and where the right intersections of communication exist and finding the right resources to put against those. It's challenging, and that means your partners have to be nimble enough to go to those hot spots and drive it, because any of those relationship elements may be the tipping point to an actual transaction.
Now, as you look at the dollars you're spending and the fees you're paying to various helpers in the whole process, who is doing very well in this new world and the transition, and who's getting screwed?
I think the entrepreneurs are doing really well. I think the folks that come in with the ideas, the folks that get it, who are at the edge. They've always said innovation starts at the edge, right? And I love the question. I think someone from the balcony said is to these agency guys is, okay, what point do you guys actually start innovating? Because it's the Foursquare that turns up and goes, here's how I can change the way you do an event using Foursquare. Here's how I can help you create value by moving my badges into your environment. And that innovation is really, really interesting. So I think the innovators and the folks at the edge will do really well. And I think there's another reason for that too, is that one of the critical things where you're selling $60 million increments of servers or $500 increments of tablets is intimacy at some points needs to be reciprocated. Right, and this notion of reciprocation of intimacy is a really important sort of tenet of this new world that's getting built around us. And I think folks at the edge are really clever at figuring out ways of doing that using technology, and it's much harder for bigger entities to actually understand and comprehend that. They sort of sit there and go, gee, do these badge things seem kind of goofy? Who cares? I mean, I've seen grown men cry losing their mayorships of things that matter to them. So.
And Marianne, what about Open? I mean, this is a big project. You've invested a lot of money in it. Is that money coming out of thin air, or is it being taken away from somebody else? Where is it coming from, and who's not getting it?
Who's not? It's shifting away from more traditional channels. So I don't look at it as someone not getting it, because as you look at Open and what we're trying to do, we're trying to help small businesses do more business. We're trying to help them to grow. So we're now looking at the collection of channels that we're leveraging to build the education over time. And in fact, I was talking to these guys in the back, and they were talking about, I really like the way you're not, you're making this investment, and it's not about just the ROI. I mean, of course, it's a financial services company. We do look at ROI. But I think it's a big leap for us that we're not just looking at, okay, direct mail, email, what's the response? And then was that channel cost effective? So this is looking at much more of a holistic model. So I would say we're shifting money from the more traditional channels, but looking at channels collectively, because we found that where we're moving our business away from not just payments, not just cards, it's into tools and solutions for small business that are much more considered purchases. So we're not going to be able to get them to just hear about it and then buy it. It's much more of an education over time. So we have to look, that's where these channels of conversation and content and education are coming in, and that's really how we're selling our product.
On that note, the one build I'd say in fairness to the conversation around our agency partners, that takes fortitude. That takes a requirement to say your program's going to continue down the path and you're going to maintain that relationship, and that when the market dips, you're not going to take your dollars and shift them to the next demand gen or next, push it through the system to promotion. And I think that's one of the things that, I was talking to Marianne about. I think the thing that's impressive about that is it's a commitment to developing the relationship and understanding what the value of that relationship is will still translate into transactions. And keeping dollars in place and holding those dollars is a challenge every day.
And I think the interesting thing, and Open is a great example of this, is that we as marketers have been brought up, addicted to the currency of ideas. It's like, okay, that idea's run its path. Let's go get a new brief out. If we don't like what we get back, we fire the agency, and then we do a search, and thus the cycle begins again of renewal. Whereas these communities are so much more than that. They're sort of living, breathing organisms, and you can't just turn them off. You've got to keep them nurtured and growing and thriving. And if you don't, then you've got a big problem. So they sort of transcend the traditional model that marketing's been built around.
So let's talk a little bit about that conversational marketing, and then I also want to just get a perspective on what's different about marketing to business executives rather than consumers. But let's focus on conversational marketing. It is said of large advertisers that they are easily made fascinated with the shiny new toy, and that if you can come out with an incredibly new idea like Foursquare or whatever it happens to be, or maybe even conversational marketing, that it sounds exciting for a while, everybody jumps into it, and then eventually maybe they decide it doesn't work, they pull back from it. Is conversational marketing actually as effective as we want it to be, or is this just a shiny new toy that is soon going to be left by the side of the road?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is?
Yeah, it's scary.
It is?
Yeah. I mean, but it requires enormous wholesale change internally. I mean, I'll give you an example. We have dedicated teams of, they're called tech community specialists, but they are conversational marketers. They were sysadmins, they were geeks, they were data center managers, they were product specialists. And these are not people you would normally let out of the building in front of customers, but they're brilliant at what they do, and they live in online forums and our tech community sites, talking to people who are literally making purchase decisions in the tens of millions of dollars, informing and managing those decisions and tracking the traffic into the communities from large customers, looking at where those customers are going and what problems they're encountering, proactively engaging with the customer. That's worth billions of dollars of sales. It is deadly serious. That is not something that you sort of tamper with lightly. But it's as bigger an investment of, people go, where are you shifting your dollars to and from? It's not shifting so much dollars from traditional brand advertising to Foursquare. It's shifting brand dollars from OPEX into CAPEX as I hire more heads, more of these people to live inside the community and fuel it. Because they're valuable.
I think the big difference is, unlike some of the previous elements in the communication mix you might dabble in, you can't dabble and walk away here. You started the conversation, so you can walk away, but guess what? That conversation's still going on, whether you like it or not. So I think to think that you can just sort of, well, that was nice and quaint.
The barriers.
That now.
But so, and we love shiny new objects at American Express. So that's always my fear, which is why, the point that Andy made around the fortitude, it is taking us fortitude to stick to something like Open Forum that doesn't have a clear payback. But just to give you an example, we, and plug a product as well, we launched a product called Open Accept Pay, which is a digital invoicing and payments acceptance tool for small business owners. And that came specifically from conversation that we heard about on Open Forum from small business owners saying, in this economy, I'm really having trouble getting paid faster. Well, we knew that because we were having trouble getting paid faster too. So we said, we have the ability to help here. And we did something different than we typically do, which is we feel like we have to build everything ourselves. So to Andy's point about entrepreneurs really being the ones who are advancing in this environment, we leveraged a partner to build it quickly, cheaper, and brought it to our customers as quickly as it could so that it could help them in this economic environment. And we've gotten so much feedback. We didn't launch it where it was 100% perfect. Instead, we said, let's get something out there and then actually get feedback. We did a beta, we got feedback, and we're iterating it over time. We wouldn't have been able to do that without Open Forum and without embracing these channels, because it's just not the way our heritage had been.
No, I mean, it sounds shockingly innovative for a company like American Express. It just has such an incredible brand that's been established for so long. So were there people elsewhere in the company who were just mortified by this idea that you're going to throw a product out there in beta
No, I have to say, in fact, we had already, we had done the beta, and we didn't call it a beta. And when we were launching it, and we knew it wasn't 100% there, but at that point, it was pretty much 90%. And then we were actually being asked to call it a beta. And we ended up pushing back and saying, well, we actually already did our beta. We're not going to call it a beta because, number one, it's going to take us longer than to actually be able to do the creative and everything that we had to do around it. So we said, let's just get it out there. What does it matter, you know, what we call it? But I have to say, we were surprised that it was embraced to actually say American Express is doing a beta. And the product is doing very well. It's gotten great response. And we have reacted to a lot of the feedback that we got from customers.
And so just to be very specific about this, I mean, Andy, what you're talking about is effectively customer service reps who are interacting with people in forums, figuring out how to solve problems, or are they salespeople? I mean,
They're a mix. They're not salespeople, so they don't sell anything. Their job is to have a conversation. And what you have to do is you have to understand that the shift occurring here is from traditional transactional style relationships. You know, I phone my sales rep, I need some information, information's transacted, it becomes a commodity. That's not what this is. You know, a lot of these folks come in, they want to have a genuine conversation. They've got really tripped out, geeky questions they want answered. And they've got very specific, complex things they want solved. They want a conversation. That's distinct from another group you get, because those are the chatterers, those are the people, and that rep's job there, that conversational marketer's job is just to have conversations authentically. Do not lie to these people, do not sell these people, you know, I mean, tell them if we can't do it, tell them we can't do it, right? Point them in the right direction, that's worth more to us. That's also different from the other class that comes in that just want to be listened to. They've got problems, they've got issues, they've got challenges, they want to be listened to. And you need a different group of people who can specialize in that. So the art of listening and engaging in conversation is very, very different than the art of delivering information, right? And I think what will differentiate the great marketers in this next era will be those that figure that out.
So I want to point out something remarkable, which is that we've been talking now for 10 minutes about conversational marketing, and the word Facebook and Twitter have not come up once, which is great and very refreshing. Tariq, does that have to do with the fact that we're talking businesses here as opposed to consumers?
At the end of the day, I think part of what we're talking about is about a new revolution to how you approach marketing, but part of this is very fundamental in good marketing. The examples that are being cited here are really about establishing an understanding of what business you're in. If, you know, what Marianne's talking about is not being in the financial services business. She's talking about being in a business growth service. It's a recognition of what the small, medium business needs to help grow their business. That's a very different filter. And to Andy's point, if all I thought I was doing was picking up the phone to have a transactional conversation, I would have the transactional conversation, thank you very much, and the conversation would be over. The fact that I want to linger and have an additional conversation suggests you are not just simply selling a widget. You are in a space that has both an inherent tangible and intangible value that your customer market is telling you that you can provide. And so from that perspective, I think the reason certain companies do this better than others is they actually understand the business that they're in. And what we're talking about is managing experiences, and the reward is the form of a transaction and potential long-term loyalty, word of mouth, explanation. The reason why why Twitter is what it is because either people have gotten it so horrifically wrong or so wonderfully right that someone has the need to actually express that. But if you didn't have that relationship established, why would you tweet?
Yeah. I mean, Twitter, both of those, I mean, it's not intentional. I mean, both of them are remarkable for us. Remarkable. I mean, Facebook, not just as a place to build communities, the response we get in the communities, you heard the Adobe examples, it's just stunning. They just lower the barrier to entry and the cost to entry, so they're remarkable. But Facebook is also proving to be quite spectacular just in terms of communities and activation. You know, the conversion rates we get from using Facebook Connect to say, join a community versus trying to get people to register and join a community via us are off the charts better. So you use Facebook now. The other one we haven't even heard about this morning, which I don't think I've heard the word one, it's LinkedIn, which is also in the business community just off the charts. I mean, I would have thought I kind of skeptically sat back a while ago and scratched my head and went, well, how does LinkedIn navigate through this new world? But they've done a great job as well.
And so be specific, all of you, if you would. So what exactly are you doing with Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn? I mean, what's working? What sounds like it should work, but it isn't working?
So I think what's working for Open is leveraging Twitter to push out the content. And Twitter has brought tremendous traffic to Open Forum because we use third-party, we use bloggers who are providing content for us. And that content then we're pushing out through Twitter. We get feedback on. We created Twitter Pulse, which is actually taking the top 1,000 or so small business owners and consolidating their Twitter feedback or their Twitter comments and bringing them to Open Forum. So it actually is helping small business owners not to have to weed through everything that's on the minds of the top small business owners. We also have, at the American Express level, we have Facebook, Twitter, et cetera. We'll be creating a Facebook page for Open Forum as well. And LinkedIn, you can leverage your LinkedIn profile within ConnectedX within Open Forum.
Yeah, I think for us, it takes on a variety of different levels of usage. Facebook, for us, I think, tends to lean a little bit more the consumer space for us. But increasingly, as we start to move into the content space and digital publishing, there's some reasons for thinking in that world. Marianne hit on another key word, which is how are you leveraging influencer and third-party influencer? And that's a place where we've been incredibly active, is driving not only those conversations through Twitter, but how do you drive them through, the old, you can't edify yourself. How do you drive that authentication through influencers that are credible in the marketplace? And that's a place where we've spent significant effort in making sure we have the right people carrying those dialogues. Not that we're just starting them, but the right influencers are starting those conversations as well.
So I got asked this question about 2 weeks ago at an MBA class, and I said, okay, well, we'll just write them out. I got to about 62 ways, and I was like, okay, I'm tired now. But I guess the big ones for us is we sell a lot. Twitter's a really interesting commercial value proposition for spot selling, for discount offers, coupons, the list goes on. So it's a real commercial channel. It's not just a distribution means for content. We use it to distribute a ton of content. We use it to aggregate communities and flash communities around topics of interest. Facebook is big for us in terms of our community sites. We build a lot of community sites inside Facebook. We've done some amazing competitions and stuff inside Facebook using just little applets and games and things. And so it's a fun way to engage folks, including the business community. We were blown away the number of times we would go out to our ITO audience, the IT operators, the geeks that run infrastructure, and say, hey, there's this competition in Facebook, and come in and give us your ideas and win a free server. And like 15,000 people would show up. You'd be like, wow, okay. It's interesting. And what's funny is you then know a lot about these people. They've got dogs, they like this type of beer and all kinds of other stuff, so it's kind of interesting.
And so actually people.
And they're humans, funny enough, they're real. So the list just goes on. I mean, I think that our challenge has been finding marketers that really fully understand it and are willing to commit their lives to doing this, and say, hey, I'm going to sign up and join a social media team, and I'm going to work on this full time.
This is marketers coming in to
Dell.
Yeah,
and that when we walk down the corridor and go, okay, tell me about this Foursquare thing. How could we be using it for events? How could we be using it for employees? What should we be doing? They go, oh, wow, cool, we can do that. Or how do I take the badge innovations in Foursquare and migrate those to my tech community? That's huge in a big company. Because I'll give you an example. If you take this notion of reward, we have these things called customer certified solutions where turns out customers are better at solving customers' problems than the average geek, right? Because they speak the same language, they understand the problem. And so you start getting into these customer certified solutions where you'll get some of these customers who solve thousands and thousands of other people's problems online. And they want badges, and they want bags, and they want pens, and they want all this other stuff that comes around reward. So you learn a lot too from just engaging on these sites and seeing how they do it.
And so thinking again about how this is changing everything in terms of everyone here, where you're going to be employed in 10 years, where the investments are going to make, and so forth. So is this Dell spending a lot more hiring people internally to manage this, dollars that might have before gone out to agencies and TV companies and so forth?
Yeah, not intentionally. We're not waking up going, oh, gee, let's not spend a whole lot more money with them. We're waking up going, I've got a fixed amount of money I can spend as a portion of revenue. The marketer's dilemma is this. If you look and you go into most companies today, they'll be spending somewhere between 70 and 90% of their marketing budget doing exactly what they did last year. And that was normally informed by exactly what they did the year before that. Change doesn't happen very fast in marketing. Normally we rinse and repeat year after year. It's really hard for a marketer to walk in and have the courage to go, you know what, I'm going to go hire a whole lot of social media community specialists, and we're going to migrate away from having, we're going to move all our Marcom to India, into a low-cost operation in India, and all of our production to India. It's really hard to do when you've got all these entrenched agency relationships and everyone's friends, and marketers love their suppliers, So it's a different world. I think it's going to change. I was amazed at Adobe's number this morning of 70+% on digital. I think you'd find most companies are still a lot less. They'd say my media spend might have got there, but when you look at their aggregate marketing cost, and normally more than 50% of their marketing cost is in headcount, not in actual spend. And you say, okay, what about the other 50% of that you're spending? How much of that is in this new world? It's normally a fraction.
And same for you,
No,
Tariq.
well, one thing I would say about Andy's comment is I think that there is someone was talking about authenticity, and I think that's the space that gets called out directly in here. I think you have to also be careful that you don't swing the pendulum so far as an organization that it comes off pretty unauthentic. I think in Dell's case, if you think about the DNA of that organization, of already being a direct sale type organization, the predilection to that one-on-one relationship was very much in the DNA. When you think about a business model like ours, where we're dealing with different channels, you're dealing with different retail markets, in certain cases, that customer relationship or annoyance or flashpoint isn't actually with you directly, it's with a third-party retailer. It creates another dimension of complexity, and so you have to think about how you're going to create that relationship in the open market and make sure that you're not just dealing with it for you so you can go like this, but rather that you're actually linked to it. So the number of programs we're doing working with partners like Best Buy, who I think happens to be doing a fantastic amount of work in this space as it relates to customer relationship and customer support. Those things have a tangential relationship to that, how it falls back on you. So I think in some ways I'm envious of what Andy's able to do because of the model that they do have, and think about some of those approaches. I think the other part is, and also driving fortitude, that part I do agree with Andy on, is fortitude in the organization to say, we're going to fundamentally take significant dollars and shift the way that we do things. And change does happen slow. It has happened slow in marketing, and it certainly happens slow in the technology industry, oddly, compared to our
One of the
innovation.
key words you used there is authenticity. And one of the challenges that we faced at the outset was, take blade servers, okay? Most of you don't know what a blade server is. You don't want to know what a blade server is, but it's a certain type of server, right? They cost a lot. You can't hire a marketer and expect them to have an authentic conversation with a customer about a blade server. So suddenly I'm sitting there interviewing sysadmins. Come work in marketing. They're like, I don't know, dude. Marketing people
What's
are kind of like weird, And so the new marketer, I think, increasingly will be the individual that is content rich and able to hold down those authentic conversations, because the old world have just been able to gloss it over in brochures and online rich websites and lots of flashes.
I mean, the flip side is I think you also have to take some of that new marketing invention and infuse it throughout your entire touch point process, right? So your sales force needs to be in a situation where they're having that dialogue, and not just in the room with the customer, but post, right? I just had a dialogue with you face to face. Do I really want a third-party social media conversation, or do I want to have that conversation extended to that same individual or that same group? So part of this is, I think there's a danger in marketing owning this. I would argue social media is prevalent across the entire go-to-market model and through the channel. And you've got to think about how are you going to harness, and then, by the way, that's even more challenging, because how do I not only harness it, how do I manage it, right? Because it's going to get out the gate. The wrong thing's going to be said, and it's going to be said for and you created the reasons for it to be said that way. So the marketing toolbox has been left open, and anybody can come in and grab a toy out of that toy box and go, they do as they should. There's an opportunity in there, and there's a vulnerability in there.
Great.
I think what is so critical is that it's not actually marketing who owns social media.
I agree.
No one owns social media. And we've had to add resources across the organization, including within customer service, because when you're dealing with information that is is private. In the case of financial services, if a customer is putting a question or a comment on Twitter, we can't necessarily respond if it has to do with personally identifiable information. So it takes a customer service organization who can figure out how to have those conversations, whether you need to bring that to the phone or through to more private channels, and be able to react. That's not a marketing role necessarily.
Great, we have a couple minutes left. Let's take some questions. I have a few more if there are none, but fire away if so.
Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon. My name's James Barrick. I'm with a San Francisco-based startup called Dapper, and we have some of that tripped-out geeky technology to help advertisers that you referred to, Andy. We service a lot of large advertisers, but typically don't get to them through agencies for a lot of the reasons that you outlined earlier. So I have a general question and a specific one. General question is, how would you guide startups, entrepreneurs, companies that have innovative technologies in navigating that very, very tough landscape of big agencies and big companies? And second, more specific, is you mentioned LinkedIn earlier. I sent you an email a few minutes ago asking if I might show you our tricked out geeky technology. So I'm hoping that you'd respond to that or have someone in your organization respond.
I will, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, my answer is, look, and I mean, I'm a complete false positive on this, I'm sure. But pick up the phone and phone me, LinkedIn, via LinkedIn. LinkedIn, if James at Federated sends me an email and says, wow, there's this tripped out, really cool technology company down the road from us, you really need to take a look, man. I'll do it the next day. I'll take a look. Because I know this is a source of advantage and differentiation. So I think, do not shy away from picking up the phone and phoning people like us and saying, I really need to show you something. And we know where our batting average isn't going to be great when that happens, but we learn a hell of a lot and we do find real gems. Do not get caught in the traditional, if you go directly to my client, you will never walk these hallowed corridors ever again. Do not ever get caught in that.
But I would also say challenge us. I don't have a lot of those barriers. I have a pretty confident level that if a big idea hits my key agency leadership, I'm going to hear about it. And if I don't, then I want to hear from you. But I got to tell you, if I find out that I'm being gated on something, there's going to be a conversation about it. But I actually find that where my best agency partners are kicking in, they've identified the fact that they've got to start innovating and working with and bringing the ideas to us. And we've got to, in turn, in fairness, we got to compensate. And we don't have a model for compensating agencies for doing that very well. But I think it's starting to happen, and I agree with Andy. Pick up the phone.
Great, let's take one more.
Hi, I already asked a question, so. I'm Tina Basil from TweetUp, and I'm just curious, you're all using Twitter as a pretty significant part of your social media mix, and wondering if you're going to the level of calculating the lifetime value of a Twitter follower?
Yep. We've got no time left. So yeah, we can. And what's really interesting is some of the new technology that integrates your social media profiles into our CRM applications. So integrating your Twitter, your Facebook profile straight into Salesforce for us. And we've been testing some of that out. That gives us a really interesting view. And most of our reps are pretty good at creating the link tangentially anyway. And so I can go in and do a search on a Twitter follower and see, okay, how much are they spending? What's their lifetime value to us at any point in time, things like that. So we're at the very early stages of that, but I think you'll see the CRM applications converge increasingly with the social applications, giving us that insight. It'll be really exciting when it happens too.
But I think you bring up a bigger issue, which is in this space, we collectively as a marketing community have to figure out what the measurement model is. And not just as it relates to Twitter, but on the whole, we have an accountability to figure out how it fits in the rest of our marketing mix analysis. So while I'd love to claim my 6 million that Andy claims, I'd like to know where that actually fits into the rest of the marketing mix, where the other elements of the marketing mix might have influenced even prior to that transaction occurring on Twitter. And if we don't, I think we'll face the same challenges all the other communication elements have that didn't turn around and put a real value understanding, or as best as we can, around what that analysis contribution was.
Absolutely. And I plan on talking to Andy afterwards to find out how he is measuring lifetime value.
Yeah. By the way, John's earlier point today is going to be a big one for us in the business space, is the privacy issue. Because we're actually subject to incredibly stringent and aggressive privacy and personal information management laws. And the further you get away from the US, actually the more stringent and rigorous and more severe the implications are. And so we're watching that pretty closely too, because did you agree to give me that information is a big question in most countries, and I can't even look at it unless you agree to actually share it with me. So there's sort of implicit sharing that exists today that fuels the social media landscape. I don't know if that'll continue to play out like it has, and as it hits B2B increasingly.
Great. Please join me in thanking our great panel.
Thanks.
I'm going to salt them outside.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.